Greetings, loyal listeners and new recruits. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And this is Genre Vision. Every week, Travis and I review and recommend horror films, action movies, fantasy flicks, sci-fi cinema, and more. And this week, we are kicking off a brand new series that will be appearing every once in a while on Genre Vision. We're calling it Global Gonzo. These are international movies that are some of the craziest, kookiest, wildest films you'll ever see. And we're kicking it off with potentially the kookiest, craziest, wildest film I've ever seen, The BOXER'S OMEN.
Yeah, this flick comes to us from 1983 out of Hong Kong, and holy shit. But before we do that, we've got a couple things we want to go over that are calls to action this week.
Really, we just want to say if you love what we do here, we could really use some reviews, specifically on Apple Podcasts. It's the best marketing tool we have at this point is to get new reviews. It's been, I don't even know how long since we got a review for the show.
Couple months.
We're out here just straight up begging. Like, we really need reviews. We unfortunately can't afford to market the shows ourselves. So the more reviews and positive reviews that we have on Apple Podcasts, the better chance that we get picked up and seen. So we just got to straight up ask you all to please review the show on Apple Podcasts. Rate and review. If you do leave a written review, we will feature it here on the show.
The other way that you can help us is word of mouth. Tell a friend about the show. Because we do not pay to advertise Genre Vision, word of mouth is the absolute best way, and really one of the only ways that people are going to be able to discover Genre Vision. Please recommend it to a friend if you haven't done so already.
And this might be a good episode to start somebody off with, because we were kicking around the idea of this series that ended up being called Global Gonzo, and we have a big list of movies. And The BOXER'S OMEN was one that, Travis, you had kind of heard about before, but I was completely unaware of.
Yeah, I had heard some stirrings about this movie in some of the circles we had inhabited online, but I had really only seen, I think, a few stills or even like animated GIFs of the film. I hadn't really sat down and watched footage proper of it, but I forget how it sort of crossed into your territory. And then you were like, we got to do this on the show. And you sent me the trailer and I said, yeah, there's no question. We are fucking doing this. So this is why we're kicking off Global Gonzo with The BOXER'S OMEN.
Yeah. We looked at a lot of Hong Kong cinema, and there's certainly a lot of Hong Kong films that are on our Global Gonzo list. And this was one of the first ones that, during my searches online for stuff that people considered some of the craziest movies ever, this eventually popped up, and I watched the trailer and was like, Travis, you have to see this. What is this? Like, we watched this movie, and we're coming from a point of understanding that this is a movie that most people listening probably have not seen or may have not even heard about. So we will do our best to recollect this movie, which will be like Travis and I trying to remember a shared nightmare. The BOXER'S OMEN starts off actually kind of comprehensible and grounded in as much as it can, in that it starts off with a boxing match where there is a Thai boxer and a Hong Kong boxer, and this is, kickboxing, and they're having a fight. And you're like, okay, so is this the titular boxer who will have an omen or not? No, it turns out that he is not going to be our main character. It will actually be his brother, Hung Chan, who will end up being our protagonist. But right from the get-go, this boxing scene, I think, actually does set you up for how over the top and kind of fun this movie is going to be, because whenever they get hit in the face, they just explode water out of their mouths.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very wet boxing scene, but it's such a mission statement for the movie. Like, the first thing it does after the Shaw Brothers logo plays and we get our first little bit of credits and the intertitle, the movie punches you in the face. I think the first shot is that POV of Hung Chan's brother getting punched right in the frickin' mush by a very recognizable character actor, martial artist, and bodybuilder, Bolo Young, who you might recognize from Enter the Dragon and Bloodsport. Very, very famous sort of look, huge muscle bound dude.
Yeah, just a mug for days. Like, he's got just bad guy written all over his face, which is why he was so good in Bloodsport. So this fight goes on, and the Hong Kong boxer wins the fight, but Bolo Young's character, comes over and like drops his elbow down on him and kicks him in the back of the neck and ends up breaking his neck. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is kind of the kickoff to whatever the story is going to be. And it turns out that the boxer's brother, Hung Chan, is ringside and sees what happens. And later we will find out that, yes, that his brother's neck was broken and he may end up being paralyzed for life. We don't know yet. But before we learn that information, after this boxing match, immediately cut to Brother Hung going to what I can only describe as a crime bar.
Yeah, it's the kind of red restaurant that you only see in movies. Like, it's lit only in one color. There's a fish tank in it. Clear inspiration for a movie we're going to talk about a little bit later. But I love that in this scene, like, they're really good at showing you interiors with really wide lenses in this movie to like establish how weird and big some of these spaces are. Like, it's such an interesting approach from the direction. The director, I should mention, is this guy named Chi Hung Kwei, who I wasn't all that familiar with before I watched The Boxer's Omen, but you look at this guy's filmography and it's like a mile long, and he's directed some really crazy sounding movies. So it's probably something that we're going to end up looking into.
Yeah. This may not be his first appearance on Global, or his last appearance on Global Gonzo, rather.
Yeah, but he's clearly like a really strong stylist, and this restaurant scene is just a clear indicator of that. But what this kind of gives us our only hint at like at what Brother Hung's job actually is. Is he like a cop or a vigilante?
I took it as he's a crime boy.
Yeah.
That's about his bet, is that he seems to be part of some gang collective whose leader is called Uncle Key. And they're talking about making some meetup with another gang. And Hung goes there alone, but is saying like, oh yeah, I'm going to go alone, but I'm actually going to have backup like nearby with weapons in case anything goes down. When he gets to the meetup, the other gang has already surprised him. It's like, yeah, we've got your boys, and look at this. Uncle Key, we've got him dismembered in a bag.
Yep. He just falls from the ceiling in a burlap sack, and you see his face poking out of a hole. It's like, oh, shit. You sent me a utterly hilarious message while I was watching this. You said, look out, the character of Uncle Key is going to be super important. And I said, currently Uncle Key is dismembered in a bag. And you said, I lied. Like fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando.
Well, and so these gangsters jump Brother Hung by rappelling down from the ceiling, and they all jump on him and push him down to the ground and put guns in his face. And you're like, okay, so there's going to be some, inter-gang crime angle to this story. Nope, never mind, because a ghost Buddha is going to show up and spray water from its shoulders, knocking everybody but Brother Hung out.
Yeah, it's not actually Buddha, but, looking at this, we don't know that, especially because we're like two of the whitest men in the podcasting realm.
Well, I mean, yeah, we learn later that this is it's a character, but it looks like a Buddhist monk who is
in a golden robe.
Yes, who's spraying water. The effect is like there's a composite of this person, this monk character who's kind of been, made a little bit transparent, and then there's some kind of sprinkler system behind them to give this effect of just paralyzing water shooting out of them.
Yeah, it's like this big peacock's tail fan of water shooting out from behind his shoulders just to sort of show his energy and his power. And this dispels all of the evil gangsters.
Yeah, that stuff is, and that story is done.
Yeah.
There's nothing more with gangs or crooks or anything like that. The movie is just like, no, that's not what this is going to be about. Don't worry about it. And this Buddhist ghost is saying to Hung, it's like, Hung, I need to talk to you. You need to meet me. And Hung's like, I don't know what the heck's going on. So he goes home. This is going to be a running thing in this movie. With as crazy as everything gets, nobody stops and thinks anything is crazy.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, like, There's some shit that happens in this movie where I really think it deserved a scene for, Brother Hung to sit and go, what the fuck just happened? I mean,
we'll get to that.
Those things clearly, like, those character beats clearly happen, but like off screen.
I guess. I mean, we'll talk about one particular moment where it's there's a cut that is just so funny to me because it's just like, yeah, that happened. Okay, moving on.
So Brother Hung goes home to his like really big apartment, gorgeous apartment. It's very noir-y. The rain is pounding the windows and the soundtrack is all sexy. He looks over at his girlfriend.
How do you know that's her? It's just at this, we're not introduced to her. She's just some woman that's there in the room with him.
Sure.
And she's leaning over and Hung can see, down her blouse and he can see her breast. And immediately after seeing that, he just picks her up and starts licking her everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Strips her down and gives her a good old Rogering and presses her bare chest up against the giant windows in his apartment. And there is this extended close-up on this woman's nipples getting so mushed against the glass. And like they're moving around like chameleon eyes. So
I told you I was like
moved around like you can hear the kind of
that. They look like Cookie Monster's eyes. Like they look like a Muppet. It's just really funny. So that's over. Understand, when we say it's like, okay, this thing ends, it's not just us like moving on. This is how the movie acts in editing and pacing.
Yeah, it's just fucking over. And then we're on to the next thing. And the next thing is, again, like really glorious and like one of the biggest laughs that you and I have shared in some time. So middle of the night, post bang sesh, Brother Hung is in bed. The woman is in bed beside him, fast asleep. I mean, really dead asleep too, because we hear the faint sound. When it's not a faint sound, somebody's fucking drumming. Bung, 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 bung. And you're like, okay, the drumming better stop. And then this golden arch that looks sort of like an upside down shallow V shape comes floating through the air and into his bedroom in the middle of the night and just hovers above his bed and casts a golden light on him. And I knew you had seen this moment already, so I sent you a hastily done Photoshop where the golden arch was replaced with the McDonald's logo.
You have to include that image on the post for this episode at
I will. Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
But it's only really funny if you've seen the movie. Otherwise, it's just it could be a McDonald's commercial. It's like that insane where it's just like, yeah, the logo appeared to me one night and like cast a heavenly glow on me. And it's like, yeah, 24-hour breakfast or something.
So this floating arch shape floats into one of the other rooms of the apartment, and the television is flashing static, and the Buddhist ghost is there, and he's saying
this
more.
Is right out of Poltergeist. All the strobe lights and shit. So
it's actually kind of freaky.
Yeah. So Hung comes downstairs, follows the arch, and there's the fucking ghost.
And the ghost is saying more. It's like, you need to come and find me and all this stuff. The girlfriend comes in and is like, what are you doing up? And he's like, don't you see there's a Buddhist ghost and a flying McDonald's arch here?
Bitch, didn't you hear the loud ass drumming?
And she's just like, oh, it's just, the TV's on. You're up watching TV. It's like, okay. Well, then this is when we find out that Hung's brother, the boxer, has this, serious injury. He's at the hospital, and Hung goes and visits him. And his brother says to him, you have to promise to go to Thailand to find this Thai boxer and get revenge. I have to see you beat him, to reclaim my honor or whatever. So we're like, okay, a story's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the crux of the story. It's that he's going to find this boxer that injured his brother and fight him, and there's going to be some kind of mystical element going on. Great. Easy enough.
So, just as predicted, Brother Hung goes to Thailand. He crashes a press conference where this badass Thai kickboxer, Mr. Bo, is saying what a badass dude he is. And then Brother Hung stands up in the middle of it and says, hey, motherfucker, you and I are going to fight.
It's great because the press conference is all about some figure saying like, okay, even though he lost the match, like he was super generous and wonderful about it, not, saying that he attacked the Hung's brother. And they're like, so we're going to present him with the championship belt. And Hung just comes up and slaps the belt out of Bobo's hands. And it's like, screw you, you're not champion, you got to fight me. And so they're like, all right, in 3 months, we're going to fight in Hong Kong.
I really love the commitment to the kayfabe on that one.
Yeah. So, I like Bobo telling the entire crowd to shut up.
Shut up!
Everyone's yelling like, fight him, fight the Hong Kong boxer. He's just like, shut up, shut up.
So
we have a story in place. Okay, great. We're gonna have 3 months. Maybe this Buddhist thing is gonna be, he's gonna go train, and that's how he's gonna be able to fight Bobo. Because when Hung is on this boat, I guess heading back to go back to his his hotel or whatever in Thailand, he sees this Buddhist temple, and the roof is the glowing arch that he saw at night.
Yep. So the golden arches call to him. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. He stops the boat. Quick, stop the boat. Hops out, goes inside the Buddhist temple, and this monk greets him and basically says like, hey, we've been expecting you. There's this whole other layer of intrigue added where Brother Hung's like, what the hell are you talking about? And so the monk starts on this big story.
This is it.
And it's like a surprisingly long diversion from the main plot of the film, but it's crucial to the fabric of everything that goes on.
This is where the movie turns, where the movie becomes utter insanity. This abbot tells Hung that, okay, there was this Buddhist abbot. His name was
King Zhao.
His name's King Zhao. And he went to Hong Kong to deal with this black magician named Mai Gusu. And this is immediately cut to like in a flashback where we just see this guy. He's in like an airport parking lot or something.
It's like the airport terminal near where the cabs are going to go pick him up. It reminded me so much of fucking Susie Bannion coming out of the airport in Suspiria.
Yeah, okay. So we see this guy walking with a briefcase, and then all of a sudden cut to a Buddhist monk calling out Mai Gusu. And this is my first really cool like visual moment, is when they cut to the monk. They're reflecting a light into the camera lens to create this rainbow prism halo around the monk's head. It's a super simple practical effect, but it looks aces.
Yeah, they would have had to put something on the lens to, diffuse those reflections in that kind of way. But it's really old school, cool optical in-camera effects. I love shit like that. So this old abbot, King Zhao, casts a spell upon the black wizard Mai Gusu. And then we cut to Mai Gusu sort of in like a non-diegetic green space where his face and his hands seemingly melt into a substance that looks like shaving cream or like banana pudding, and he's freaking out and his face is melting.
The way the monk casts this spell is he has this like little mirror object that he throws that attaches onto Mai Gusu's head, and then it's like burning him. And yeah, his skin starts to turn into like pudding, and these giant, what I can only describe as balloon boils, like start appearing all over his arms, and they're expanding, and he's grabbing at them and they're popping. And then Travis, there's this great shot of him falling down behind some chairs, and the camera turns over to the right. And when he comes back up, he's suddenly turned into like an old kabuki actor woman person.
Yeah, big long white wig and this huge black mark on the forehead where the mirror burned him. And then a bat flies out of Mai Gusu's mouth, and the abbot whoosh, reaches out, catches the bat. He then captures the bat, takes it back to Thailand from Hong Kong. Bad move, by the way. Customs is not going to like magic evil bat brought through. Anyway, he takes it back to the Buddhist temple, and he puts it on like a ceremonial tray, and then he takes a metal stake and drives it through the bat's heart, and he's fucking hammering the stake through the bat's heart. And it gets deeper.
Well, this is where the real villain of the movie shows up, because we cut from the temple to some other place where there is a statue of a giant demon And there's also these 4 hand statues, and on each hand statue, there's a different weird animal. There's like a centipede and a scorpion, and one of the animals is a bat. And when the bat is getting nailed to this table by the Buddhist, this bat statue starts to melt. And then there's a giant human skull in the middle of this demon room, and there is a bat sorcerer guy that pops up out of it and flies down to the melting bat statue and gets pissed off and says, "How dare he kill my bat?"
So you might think like, oh, like giant Draculoid looking sorcerer dude. No, it's like this tiny little dude. It's just like this tiny little nerd with frizzy hair and a silly mustache. He's just like, what's happening to my bat? And so he rips off his mask, and, you know, we get to see him in all his silly glory.
This guy's my favorite.
He's fucking dope. The credits on this aren't really done to contemporary standards, and so I can only hypothesize that this guy is played by an actor named Somjai Boomsong, and this is his only credit on IMDb. I don't know why it's his only credit on IMDb, because he's the fucking best. So this guy, I don't even think he's ever named in the movie, the Bat Wizard. He wakes up, he wonders why his bat, Maigusu, was killed. And so he's like, all right, I have a solution for this. And he goes and grabs a pot off a shelf, like an earthenware crock. And there's a bunch of guts in it and a bunch of dead rats. He pulls a dead rat out and he eats it. He just bites right into the dead rat's guts. And then he's spitting rat blood on this bat skeleton statue. And this makes the bat skeletons, both the one in front of him and the one that's being hammered to death by the Buddhist, resurrect and get back up.
And they're these adorable little bat skeletons, and they just start waddling away. And the bat sorcerer is like knocking 2 bones together behind his bat statue, going like, come on, get out of there, get out of there. And we're cutting back to the bat skeleton in the temple, and it's this little cute thing. It like waddles like a penguin, like
it's fucking adorable.
It's so cute, and it won't be the only cute demon monster in this movie. But then the abbot the Buddhist monk shows back up and sees it trying to escape and smashes it with a hammer. And this just takes the bat sorcerer to another level.
Oh, motherfucker. He gets so mad. And what he does is so disgusting. Like I've got a pretty strong stomach for like gore and slimy and stuff, but what he does is he goes and grabs another pot off the same wall that he grabbed his like guts and rat pot, and he pulls out this skull, and this skull is covered in fucking grease and slime and like bits of shit hanging off, eyeballs still in it, brain still in that motherfucker. It's covered in real guts. Like they clearly used a lot of real intestines in this movie.
Yeah.
And then he opens up the skull and like, I forget what he does. He eats something and then like spits it out and pours it into the skull.
No. He before he even grabs the skull, he grabs a flute and starts playing it, and these snakes start slithering out of the jars.
Oh, the snake venom.
And they slither, these cobras slither up to him. He grabs them and drains their venom into a jar. Then he cuts the skull open and he pours the venom into the brain. He mixes that up and pours that mixture onto a piece of paper. Then he grabs a sack of spiders and tells the spiders, and he's all this time he's like praying to the Lord of the Dark. And he's tells the spiders to drink up this venom because, like, we don't know at this point. This is all just happening.
Well, it's so funny. Like, these little fake tarantulas are, like, you know, skittering about, and they go over to the pool of, you know, green shit on the floor. And they have, like, little straws that come out, and they suck up the venom. It's a fun reverse gag, you know, instead of the shit spreading, it all sucks up into the tarantulas.
And these are like literal clear plastic straws jutting out from their mandible area. It's so adorable.
So this is all to say that this bat sorcerer, this little dude with the frizzy hair, kills this abbot, King Zhao, by having tarantulas dangle from the ceiling in the Buddhist temple and stab poison needles in his eyes.
Yes.
The tarantulas do that. The tarantulas have the ability to stab people with poison needles, in case you didn't know.
With giant metal poison needles.
Yeah.
So this unfortunately stops the abbot from becoming immortal, from reaching Buddhist immortality, because he's cursed now. So then there was a prophecy that Hung Chan would appear and break the curse set upon him so he could achieve immortality. And we find this out by discovering that the abbot's corpse is in a giant earthen urn. The monks break it open with hammers, and his mummified corpse comes to life and tells Hung that they were twins in a past life and that their fates are connected. So the abbot says that when my body decomposes, you, Hung Chan, are going to die in maybe about a month.
Yeah. So meanwhile, all I'm thinking is, okay, Hung Chan's got 3 months to defeat the fucking kickboxer guy.
This all happens like like out of nowhere. And then all of a sudden it's this, okay, you've got to remove this curse from this mummified monk so he can attain immortality. You're like, what? And Hung Chan is like, nah, no thanks, bro. I'm not in for it. So he's got
to refuse the call, you know.
So he goes back to his hotel and he's on the phone with a woman trying to get a flight to go to Hong Kong in the morning.
I love this. I love how abbreviated he's like, hey, sugar tits, give me a flight. Yeah. My name's Hung Chan. Tomorrow? Great. Yeah. Like if only air travel were that easy.
was that easy. Well, this movie doesn't have time because it needs to cut to the next scene where in the middle of the night, Hung Chan gets up and he starts like looking like he's going to puke. So he goes into the bathroom and he pukes up a spotted moray eel.
Boy, does he.
This is so gross.
Yeah. I mean, They built a fake mouth for the eel to come out of, so you see like the eel coming out of the mouth in extreme close up and stuff like that. But it's, ugh. I mean, and moray eels are nasty, mean little motherfuckers too. And you know, when they get bigger, they get even meaner.
He pukes it up. It flies at him at one point, and then goes down the toilet. And this is where immediately cut to Hung Chan back in the Buddhist temple, being like, "All right, I'm going to become a monk."
Oh
like,
no. Oh no, honey, you're forgetting about the parade.
No, that's after this. Like it cuts from him puking up the moray eel to him with the abbot that he met saying like, all right, like I guess I have to become a monk. And he says like, oh, I guess that means I'm going to have to shave my head.
Huh.
And then it cuts to the parade.
Yeah, this is like the trouble of trying to remember a shared nightmare.
When things happened in order. Yeah.
I thought my memory of it is like he pukes up the moray eel. There is no moment for him to consider what that means, but like it is stated earlier, like, you know, the monk, the abbot, the now deceased abbot who reanimated will give him a sign. Well, there's your sign, motherfucker. You're gonna puke up a moray, and that from like my memory is going from that to him in the parade with like cat people and cross dressers and like flag wavers, and it's like a time marching band. It's so loud
with a giant elephant and everything.
Yeah. My note is I'm surprised that a Buddhist monk didn't stick his head out of the window of the temple and go, "Shut up!" It's so fucking loud. Anyway,
so this parade carries Hung Chan to the temple for his monkening. And it's here that he is renamed as Kaidi Baolo. And now he has to go through all this different training, which involves sitting in like river water and trying to meditate while getting attacked by leeches. That's gross, but very short.
Mercifully, I fucking hate leeches.
But then we get one of my favorite moments in the movie in which immediately just cut to Kaidi Baolo is inside of a giant white urn, and there's all of this writing on the outside of it. And then there are a bunch of monks sitting in a circle around the urn, and they're all holding ropes that are strung up through the ceiling and into the urn and attached to Kaidi Baolo's hands.
We're going to we got to call him Hung Chan because like they bring back his old name later on. Like suffice to say, like they rename him for the purposes of his training as Kaidi Baolo, but it's not important.
It doesn't say. Okay, so Hung Chan. So anyways, these ropes are attached to his fists, and the monks are all chanting. And then all of a sudden, the ropes start glowing red, and the red energy is transferring into the ropes into Hung Chan, and the writing on the outside of the urn transfers into the inside of the urn, and eventually, through the magic of animation, transfers onto Hung Chan's body. This moment is so cool.
It's dope as hell. I mean, it reminded me a little bit of, have you seen Qui-Gon?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a story about the monk who goes to meditate in the graveyard, and he gets covered in all the freaking writing, you know, all the holy spells that'll protect him from the evil spirits and stuff like that. You know, this is kind of recurring motifs in Buddhist fiction. But because he's gone through this sort of training process and has all this power transferred to him, he's now ready to fight the evil. So there is my favorite cut in the movie, which I found totally mind-boggling. We cut from the whole training process to I think it's a shot of like a moon and a flapping fucking bat wizard. He's flying like a bat at the camera, and we now understand this to be the showdown between Hung Chan and the Bat Wizard. And he says, "Show me what you got."
I want to see what you got. What I love about this is that when they cut to it, this takes place in a literal void space.
Yeah, well, it's like a spiritual battleground that's like this big misty soundstage with a moon on one side.
It's awesome. Like, it's actually cool. And you know, when we talk about void space on this show a lot, we're talking about that they're trying to replicate the idea of a real place, but it could be anything, anywhere, and there's nothing going on. This actually making it so striking and formalist with the decision, like you said, it makes it feel like, oh, this is a spiritual battleground. This is a wizard's duel.
So fucking Bat Wizard puts on his war paint, which is basically just to make him look like the Ultimate Warrior from the WWF.
Which, I mean, when you say puts on his war paint, you mean his war paint appears.
Well, he's a sorcerer. Duh.
Yes. So
he's got this lovely purple sequin headband that goes on his like frizzy fro hairdo. So his fro is then like, you know, cinched in half. It
he's
looks
also got like
hilarious.
a shiny, like, what is it? Like a lame robe that he's wearing, like this purple sparkly robe. It's
fucking awesome.
It's such a great look.
I love that his mustache is painted bright yellow. I mean,
yes!
they give like a really tight close up to show you that like this motherfucker went so far as to paint his mustache.
So now we get a magic duel. And it starts off with the Bat Sorcerer summoning a bunch of like crocodile skulls on the ground. And he grabs a chicken and cuts off its head. You see the little, I think it's a fake head. I don't know with this movie.
In this movie, there's enough real guts and like real dead animals that you're like, I don't know.
Like, I don't know what's going on. Like all bets are off. So he cuts the head off this chicken and he starts spreading the blood all over the alligator skull. So I'm like, okay, the skulls are going to come to life. Maybe he's going to make like an army of alligators or something. Fuck no.
Well, not at first.
At first, bats start crawling out of the alligator's skulls with these glowing red eyes like they're the owls from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, the reveal of this is so great because you first start to see it in shots that are a little bit wider. So you see like the crocodile skull's eyes light up red, and then they cut closer and you see that it's red-eyed bats crawling out of the crocodile skull's eyes. It's like, man, this is so fucking cool.
Well, and then they cut to a wide shot, so you see all the skulls. So it's just all these red eyes coming up all at once. It's genuinely awesome.
So the wave of bats flies at him to attack him. But then in that moment, Hung Chan manages to summon the big red magical glowing urn around himself. And the bats are basically incinerated upon impact with the magical urn. Then the crocodile skulls come in and they're chomping at him, and he flings them back doing some crazy shit.
No, he has all these candles around him, these little like candelabra things. And when the alligator skulls come chomping, which by the way, there's a great shot of a low angle with a wide lens that's at the snout of one of the alligator's heads, at the crocodile heads, as its jaws start to open, and you just see the moon in the background. It's one of my favorite shots in the movie. So these crocodile heads start snapping at him. He grabs the little candles and sticks candles in their mouths. And then he throws the rotted chicken that I guess was made to bring the life away from him, and the crocodile skulls chase that, and the sorcerer is pissed off. He's like, no, go back around and fight him. And then he turns around and flips off Hung Chan.
Oh, I mean, just straight flips in the bird, like pretty much right at camera too. It's so fucking funny. And like the movie's clearly not unaware of how ridiculous it's being. Like it knows it's being big and gross and silly. And so the next logical step in all of this is that the Bat Wizard summons this big, like fleshy, pulsating pod or pile of goop or something like that. And then this severed green alien head comes floating out of the pile of goop, and it has this big pink spinal cord that trails, and it's floating, and then it starts whipping the spinal cord around, and the sound goes woo 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 woo,
and it's moaning, and it's making this like it's like the Eraserhead baby, like, oh my god. So
this was the kind of, this, to be fair, was like the moment of the movie where it was like, this has bested me. Like I was like kind of prepared for everything the movie had to throw at me until this moment where I was like, fuck me. Like it really does. This whole sequence is like totally transcendent in terms of like, oh no, we're going to go for super gross, super silly. I mean, you said it kind of looks like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. It does look like Piccolo. It has big green pointy ears, and it's flying around, and the spinal cord is going woo 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 underneath it, just whipping around.
But then the Buddhist candle that Hung Chan has standing next to him, the flame on that gets shot into Piccolo Eraserhead's mouth, and it explodes. So
these are all like Castlevania creatures.
Yes.
Flying bats, like flying alligator skulls, big green severed heads with whipping, spinal cords attached. It's so Castlevania.
That is a fantastic description of the monsters in this movie. It's super Castlevania enemies. So then the sorcerer has one last trick up his sleeve. He's gonna rub pudding on his neck, and then he stabs his neck with needles.
He eats a bunch of guts before it.
He eats the guts of the rotted chicken. and then he stabs needles into his pudding neck, causing his head to float off of his body with these long muscle tendon tendrils dangling underneath it.
Big red spaghetti, just big red spaghetti energy falling out of the motherfucker's neck. And it attacks the severed head, another severed head. The first severed head didn't fucking work. And the big red thing coming out of that one clearly didn't work. So he's going to, fuck it. If I can't do something, I'll do it myself. God damn it. I'll sever my own head. So that's what he does. There's a bunch of spaghetti coming out. And this actually manages to get a hold of Hung Chan's head.
Yeah, he's about to kill him.
Get him. Yeah.
He's about to kill him, but then the sun starts rising, and Hung Chan grabs the spaghetti tendrils and is like, you screwed up. The sun's coming out, and the head just melts. There is a dope shot where the skull is just looking directly into the camera with the sun in the background. It looks like a metal album cover.
It's so fucking cool. And so he bests, weirdo Dracula in that moment. And I guess that section of the movie is just over. It's like we talked about with, that's just over now. That's just fucking done.
Yeah, then he immediately is back in Hong Kong. It just cuts to him and he's like, yep, I'm back in Hong Kong. And he comes and sees his girlfriend, who I guess just has not left the apartment in however long he's been in Thailand.
She's keeping up on her hygiene, though. That's important.
Well, yeah. So she's of course in the shower because this movie is perverse. So she's there and she shows up and is like, "Oh, you were in Thailand. You better not give me all the STDs you got from sleeping with women while you were there." He's like, "No, I was studying to be a monk. I was abstinent." But then he sees her in the shower and he joins her. And this is going to be a bad no-no because earlier we know that you have to remain celibate.
Right. So he's not supposed to go home and bang his betitted girlfriend. He clearly does. And then we cut back to crazy shit happening in Thailand. Turns out the vampire sorcerer that we just saw defeated was like one of 4 sorcerers. And they're all just like equally as schlubby and like frizzy haired.
They're doughboys.
It's wonderful.
But this was all set up like the demon room that had the statues with the bat and the centipede and stuff.
Right.
We see that those animals are the totems of these other sorcerers.
Mm-hmm.
So they burn his body, and there's this awesome explosion on the funeral pyre where fire just goes all over the ground, and his ghost appears and is basically like, okay, they're going to try and resurrect him in a new body by digging up like what looks like the shell of a body made of marshmallow fluff.
Yeah, what they do is in their swamp hut, God knows where that is compared to like the big, fucking temple where the bat shit in the jars are. Who knows? Places and time in this movie are like immaterial. It's just like, anyway. So they open up the big hole in the middle of their hut, and they like, there's the swamp underneath. So they just pull like a mummified body out of the water. And that's what we see. It's like, okay, they're clearly trying to resurrect something or somebody. We then cut back to Hong Kong, and there is the fight between Hung Chan and Mr. Bo.
That's going on, while at the same time, the monks in the temple in Thailand are chanting and doing the ceremony for the abbot for him to obtain his immortality. But because these sorcerers are, I guess, going to resurrect the bat sorcerer, the curse is not going to have been lifted. So to continue this resurrection spell, they kill a gator, or I'm sorry, a crocodile. I kept thinking they were alligators, but they kill this alligator. I just said it again. They kill this crocodile, and they have this wonderful big fake. I think it's a fake crocodile.
It's very fake. Come on.
It looks very fake.
There is a sequence though where they like filmed at a crocodile farm, and you see one of the sorcerers like, I choose that one. He's going to go chase after it and shit. And then cut to the swamp hut again where these like 3 witch dudes live. And, they put the dead crocodile in like a hoist, and they like lower it down onto a big ceremonial table. They cut that motherfucker open like turkey on Thanksgiving,
and they toss out its guts. And my favorite part is they pull out enormous crocodile eggs, to which they go, crocodile eggs, and throw them on the ground.
Pull out a Louisiana license plate out of that motherfucker.
Right.
So then they hollow that shit out like a tauntaun, and then they take this mummified body that they dug out from the swamp earlier, and they shove it in the crocodile's body, and then they sew that motherfucker shut. And you're like, okay, some serious black magic is happening here.
And there's something so wonderful during this sequence, Travis, something on the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, while this crocodile magic shit is going on, you hear a very familiar sound. It should be familiar to anyone who has seen the classic Don Coscarelli film, Phantasm. And that is the sound of, boy.
It is straight up a soundbite of Angus Scrimm saying, boy, on the soundtrack as part of the music.
Or something. I mean, it could be, it's definitely not like a diegetic sound effect of something happening in the scene. Like, nobody says boy, but Angus Scrimm's on the soundtrack going like,
it is a mood enhancer.
Well, and it's what I love about it is like, it clearly means that somebody involved in the Boxer's Omen production, possibly the director, Ji Hung Kwai, saw Phantasm and was like, fuck, this movie's cool. And that sound of like Angus Scrimm saying boy is so fucking iconic, and the way that movie ends is so fucking cool. Like, I gotta put it in my movie.
I mean, Phantasm would be a decent shelf pick as far as the crazy dream logic that they share. So I can see that connection being made with Boxer's Omen.
Sure.
So this ritual continues with some really gross shit where the 3 sorcerers all chew up some food. Like, I think they chew some like durian and some other stuff, and they chew it.
Gross shit, man. Like a lot of chewing and like spitting and ugh.
Well, they chew it, spit it out, then pass it to the next person. They chew it and spit it out, and so on. And this is actually done, like on camera.
Uh-huh.
It is genuinely people chewing and regurgitating food and then passing it. It made me think of the barfing scene in Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, but that's fake. This is real regurgitation. I
mean, meanwhile, fucking, Hung Chan is in the boxing match with Mr. Bo, and like, not only is, the water spraying out of their mouths whenever they get hit, but like, Hung Chan is clearly on the ropes at one point during the match. And so they just like put like a bunch of KY jelly in his mouth, and this goop is just pouring out of Hung's mouth. It's so gross.
Well, and it only gets worse for him because the sorcerers feed this mushed up stuff to the carcass that they pulled out, which is this naked lady. And they're like, oh yeah, this food will revive you. And this is apparently the new vessel for the bat sorcerer, is this naked lady.
You say apparently. I have no idea. It could be just like another witch that they just had stored away in cold storage for like, I mean,
that's the connection I make, because it's this sorcerer that had to be killed to release the curse that's on the abbot. So the fact that he's been resurrected in a new body means that the curse is still intact.
Well, if it's his new body, call it an upgrade, because she's pretty hot. And she's very naked.
She's very naked. She gets some spike nails, and the sorcerers walk her over to an effigy of Hung Chan, and say,
or is it the abbot?
No, it's Hung Chan.
It's Hung Chan. Okay.
Yes, because they're like, kill him, and she pokes her spike nails into the eyes, causing Hung Chan to go blind. And there's some cool insert shots where, they do some makeup on him so his eyes look puffy and red, but then we see from his perspective, and all he can see are like maggots.
It's true. This does happen.
it's so...
and you called it, quote, unbridled insanity of the best caliber. And it's true. All these things do happen, and the experience of describing to you what happens in the audio format cannot possibly hold a candle to actually watching it. So then at this point, after winning the boxing match against Mr. Bo, surprise, surprise, he goes back to Thailand to try and figure out, I got the blindness. So he goes back to the freaking monastery, and he's like, why am I blind? And they're like, well, you banged your girlfriend, dude, against the rules.
No. That's not what happens. They come back.
Well, in broad strokes, it's kind of what happens.
He comes back, and they're like, okay, the sorcerer's still alive, so we'll set up another duel for you. But did you break any of the rules? And he lies and says, no, I didn't break any of the rules. So they're like, all right, we'll get ready for this fight. I'm going to take you to this 1,000-year-old mushroom called Ganoderma, which is a gold tree shooting out of the eye of a Buddhist statue. And they have to extract the essence of iron from it.
Right. So it's this little dot of like juice that they give him in a tiny little like locket or like a necklace or something like that.
Yeah, that will make him super dope. And when they're like giving him another ceremony, he has to go through this process of, hey, did you break the laws of gambling and stuff? And he says no. And there's a little candelabra and if he lies, a flame goes out. So when they get to the abstinence thing, it's great. There's this great zoom in to him, and the music is like dun 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 dun, and he goes no, and the candle goes out.
So he loses his powers. So this is our low point for the hero. He's going into the third act. He knows he's going to have to go into spiritual battle with this sorceress, but he doesn't know how he's going to do it because he doesn't have any powers. So his boss, basically, not the prior abbot, but, it's Buddhist boss. It's like, yes, look, dude.
The mummy abbot.
Yeah. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to Kathmandu. We're going to send you to fucking Nepal. You're right. The birthplace of Buddhism, right? And you're going to go there. You're going to learn a little bit about the sutras. And after that, pray for the best. So we do go to Kathmandu. This movie was shot on location in Hong Kong and Bangkok and in Kathmandu. This was a big production.
Yeah, well, and this is the one time in the movie that the movie slows down to its detriment.
Yeah, and it's an odd sport. It's an odd place for it because this is the third act. We're supposed to be propelled into this third act where the hero is going to, take on the villain again and win. But instead, he just kind of bums around Nepal and goes to this one, very important Buddhist temple. And he basically listens to a tour guide talk for a couple minutes.
which yes, is giving us information that we need to know, which are about like, oh, these golden ashes that only appear in the Buddha's hands when it's at sunrise, when the sun's at a certain time in the sky and all this. It's like, this is important to know. But before that, we're getting just like a lot of B-roll of him walking around Nepal, like seeing street vendors and stuff.
Sure.
that's where it slows down. But don't worry, it picks right back up, because after he learns this information at the temple, he goes back to his Nepal hotel. I don't know, like just a room. And he cuts open his arm so he can insert the essence of iron into himself. And this arm gag is really good.
It is. I mean, it's not really bloody, but it's clear what they did was they had to build up a false arm, but they used his real hand. So his real hand is underneath the false arm, and you know, his real hand is in the foreground. And we see him putting a slit in this false arm. And, you know, I think they put real meat in the false arm so that you could really see muscle tissue when he splits that open.
It's gross.
And then he pours the little droplet from the mushroom, the essence of iron, into that hole. And we see it turn into like a little ball of light. And it travels up his arm and down into his body.
So then he goes back to the temple with the golden ashes, which is what he needs to apparently retrieve in order to save him and remove the curse. He goes in. There's a stone guardian there that comes to life and starts speaking, going, "Intruder alert! Intruder alert!" Which is great. I love that thing's voice. It comes to life. It's one of like those multi-armed Shiva-looking things.
Sure.
It throws a giant laser spear and laser throwing star into Hung Chan, who is okay because he's got the essence of iron. He's able to blind it with something. I don't know what it was.
I mean, you've seen this movie twice, I should say. And
yes.
I mean, that's just how incomprehensible this movie really is. Like, it is incredibly difficult to describe what goes on. Because the imagery is that wacky and it's cut so rapidly sometimes. Then this sort of sets up the final showdown between the newly resurrected sorceress and Hung Chan. And there's this, you know, big Buddha statue in the background that has its palm outstretched where the magic ashes are supposed to appear eventually. And
I will say the sorceress's look here is very like Rita Repulsa from Power Rangers meets Slave Leia.
So Power Rangers. Oh, yeah. It's like erotic Power Rangers is what I said.
Yes. So she shows up, and it's a really cool image because at first it looks like she has outstretched arms, like that one Freddy Krueger moment in the first Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
But it turns out that it's like, oh, she's got these skeleton hand weapons that are alive, and she shoots them at Hung Chan, and they scratch him up. Then she lays down a blanket and summons a giant fake crocodile, which is just as adorable as all the other fake animals in the movie.
A message I sent you, and I still believe it, is I am loving the number of crocodiles in this movie.
It's so cute. Hung Chan is able to trap that crocodile in a space, and then it's just done because this is that movie. All of a sudden, then the sorceress is above Hung Chan. She grabs his head with her knees and swishes it around like she's doing a pole dance or something, and then summons a bunch of fuzzy caterpillars on top of him, which proceed to crawl into his nose and ear, which is so nasty to me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are close-ups of what looks like a person's finger that's been covered in like a fuzzy covering, you know, that's supposed to look like the caterpillars, and it's just jammed right the fuck up his nose. It's like really nasty.
But once again, just like in the other Wizards duel, Hung Chan is saved by the rising sun. It shows up, and we have a Staff of Ra moment where a sun laser shoots into the room and the golden ashes appear. The essence of iron, which is the little ball of light inside of Hung Chan, shoots out of him and go into the ashes, which turn into a guy.
A dude. I mean, like,
I don't know who this is supposed to be.
Is it supposed to be like Siddhartha Gautama? Like, is this the Buddha? Like, I don't know. They don't really ever explain it. It's just some fucking guy in like a costume. Like, who is he? So he begins spiritual warfare with the sorceress, and
he floats down on a laser train.
Sure, like you do.
And fuses with Hung Chan. And begins to battle the sorceress. He does this by ripping her skin off.
Yeah, she turns into Slim Goodbody. It's pretty fucking crazy.
And
then she goes like full like Isabel Adjani in possession, and she slams down on the floor, has this huge gush of like glowing blue paint out of her rear end or orifices adjacent to your rear end. And then she gives birth to 3 horrible, ugly fetuses that crawl out of her, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we see the 3 fetuses are actually the 3 other frumpy sorcerer dudes, and they're wrapped in saran wrap. Why are they wrapped in saran wrap, Drew? Why? I mean, they're like wearing suits made out of saran wrap.
Yes. I mean, I'm assuming they were thinking it was going to be some kind of like amniotic sac looking thing, but it is just straight up saran wrap. So they rip this off. The one sorcerer stabs himself in the chest. The other 2 slit their wrists and pour blood over that sorcerer's corpse, so they're all dead. But then out of that sorcerer's corpse, Travis, I don't even know how to describe this.
They're like 3 miniature brontosauruses with like little fuzzy tufts on the neck. They come crawling out of the dead sorceress's body, and the neck is like going up and down, and it's like,
well, like whatever. I don't know what they're supposed to be made of. They just are. I don't know. And where their heads and faces should be, instead they just have single eyeballs.
Indescribable. I'd put my hands up.
If this is a like creature from Buddhist folklore or something, and so if anybody knows what the hell these things are, I need to know.
Please. So the message I sent you at this point in my watch was, man, some shit goes down in this movie, don't it?
I mean, and I think I said that's the understatement of the millennium.
Indeed you did. So this, oh God, Buddha, what is he? No, the little fuzzy dinosaur creatures, they shoot Buddha's eyes out.
That lasers shoot out of their eye tuft faces into the Buddha's eyes, the statue of the Buddha's eyes, which explodes, which causes the guy that's been floating on his laser train chair, that blows his eyes out. But then he starts ringing the rim of a bell, and these other Buddhist statues surrounding him have these devices in their hands that fly out and explode the dinosaur eye face things.
The end.
No, there's one little last thing.
Okay.
Is all of a sudden we cut and Hung is back in the Buddhist temple in Thailand.
Yeah, we got a little epilogue where we learn everything's going to be okay. And the needles that were put into King Zhao's eyes by these tarantulas, whenever that was, they then come out of Hung Chan's eyes. The needles push themselves out through the eyelids of Hung Chan. Everyone was like, oh man, it must feel fucking great to finally get those out.
For dry eyes, use needle eyes.
Yeah. So then the movie's pretty much over. And then the most unnecessary disclaimer in cinematic history appears on the screen. The persons and events depicted in this film are fictitious, and any similarity to actual persons or events is coincidental. To which I said, I'd love to be the person sitting in the audience who's like, hey, this is just like that time a witch dropped caterpillars all over me.
This is exactly like the time a bat wizard summoned crocodile skulls and attacked me. Oh, who stole my life story? Look, The Boxers, I've seen crazy movies. Like, we both have. We've seen movies that are like, this is wacky, this is crazy, you got to see this. That there's plenty, Hausu and stuff like that. I have never seen anything like The Boxer's Omen.
You are not prepared. You're not prepared. It boils down to that. And I'm sure there are crazier movies out there, like crazy, like gonzo gore movies and stuff like that. And they've never been my bag. Like I'm just not into that kind of stuff, for like gore for gore's sake. I like gory movies, but there's got to be something else going on.
Well, I mean, beyond this is crazy in a scene by scene conceptual sense where you don't know what's going to happen.
It's so stream of consciousness.
I mean, and it's like, oh, well, shouldn't that be like any good story? Like, it's like, no, literally, like a guy can just barf up a spotted moray eel in a scene and on to the next thing like nothing happened. It's insanity. It's crazy. And literally, I mean, we had to recount the movie as best as we could, because how else do you even talk about a movie like The Boxer's Omen?
Well, I told you, it was like somebody who's, imagine trying to make a descriptive audio track for this movie. At some point, you just throw your fucking hands up and go, I don't know how to describe what I just saw.
Yeah,
You know, I took a note. My note says, yes, Buddha's magic balls. I don't even know what that means, man. I mean, I have like an inkling, but I don't know what image was associated with that. You know, I was able to write down that the sorceress turned into Slim Goodbody because I remember what Slim Goodbody looks like. But otherwise,
I mean, and here's where I think we do have to offer a slight peek behind the curtain. We had to go hunting for this movie, and the fact that we had to do that, I think, is criminal. The Boxer's Omen, first of all, needs a loving restoration.
yeah, I mean, granted, the DVD transfer it was given for its Region 1 release, which is now out of print, it's not bad. Like, the movie's not in horrible shape, but it clearly needs an upgrade to Blu-ray. I mean, this is a movie that actually looks, you know, despite its kind of low budget and grunge aesthetic sometimes, like it looks pretty good. Like those wide shots of the sets and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, there's money there, and
it's a production.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, like we talked about, shot in Hong Kong and Bangkok and Kathmandu. Like, there was clearly some money put into this and some effort to make it kind of like a big deal,
yeah,
or at least to seem like a big deal.
This isn't like, because I've seen like Z-grade horror movies that are being shot with consumer grade, you know, DV stuff, and the ideas there are insane and crazy, but the production there's no production at all,
or there's really no drive to tell an epic spiritual story. And like here, this is a huge spiritual journey on like the level of The Matrix.
Yes, I mean, that sounds like hyperbole, but it really isn't. It is an incredible look into another culture's idea of folklore and how to integrate that into a modern art form such as movies, because there's plenty of things in this where I would love to know. It's like, oh yes, this is based on this particular myth, because so much of the story comes across like myth telling, where it's just, okay, well, you have to go to this place and you need to get 7 apples from the tree of whatever, and if you don't do it by sunset, a bat is going to come out of the mountain and rip your face off.
There's no why, it's just truth.
Exactly. And I love that about myth, that it's like you just characters and people in ingesting the story just take these things at face value and look for the metaphor and everything behind them. And The Boxer's Omen just has that as a movie. It doesn't care. It doesn't want to stop its insanity to have to try and explain itself to an outsider. It just wants to do what it wants to do. It wants to tell this very particular story. And the way it executes that, not only are the ideas insane and crazy and outlandish, but they're not executed poorly. Like, it's easy to see the effects of things, and like, yes, that is clearly a goofy little fake bat skeleton or whatever, but it's not without charm and polish and genuine talent behind the camera.
Yeah, it's not like somebody failing to do something at all. It's succeeding in being so outright batshit crazy that you can't help but sit there and just be so floored and impressed, you know, by what's going on. I really do think this is an all-timer midnight movie. I liken it to, you know, El Topo, you know, Jodorowsky movies. And Jodorowsky, really, it's in the same league. You know, it's just a bunch of crazy shit happening for art reasons, and you're just like, you know what? I'm here for it. And it's got different standards for, you know, for cinematic quality. But
more so than it, like, you know, a Jodorowsky movie is trying to just be very specifically arty and metaphorical and metaphysical and all this stuff. The Boxer's Omen is doing the fun, cool visual nuttiness of that stuff while telling an actual accessible story. Like this, that's what's crazy to me, is that the story is not alien or anything. We got what was going on.
It's sufficiently Campbellian, you know, and like I said, it's just like The Matrix. It's this guy who exists in this paradigm of what he understands reality to be, and then he is shown this sort of alternate layer, this sort of spiritual truth beneath reality, and then he gets to journey into that and come out differently. That is, you know, the essential template of a Campbellian hero. And we see it in The Matrix. We see it here. So yeah, the structure of it is much, much more, I think, palatable than anything Jodorowsky ever did. But it has that same level of just like, we don't give a fuck. We're going to do what we want. It's an absolute must see.
Yeah. I mean, for the kicking off this global gonzo idea, the bar has been set incredibly high.
Yeah.
I mean, the Boxer's Omen is easily one of the most fun movies I've ever, like, experiences I've ever had watching. I mean, I watched it a second time this week to not only remind, I was like, okay, I need to write down, I need to remind myself, but because I'm like, I need to see this again. Did all of this really happen? Like, did I really see what I thought I saw? And for me to watch the same movie twice in a week, that should speak to its quality. So I hope whatever little bit we can do to get the Boxer's Omen out there and in people's minds and searching about it and everything, I hope it can lead to a restoration. This needs to be available on the most updated physical media. It needs to be available somehow streaming. This movie needs to be seen. I say this a lot about movies, but I feel the most comfortable I've ever felt saying it about the Boxer's Omen. This movie deserves a cult.
For sure. And the fact that it's not talked about more in the US is nearly criminal.
Yes.
So we talked about Jodorowsky and we've talked about, The Matrix and other kind of similar stories. But if you wanted to find something that was a little bit more similar or adjacent to what we talked about in the Boxer's Omen, you would go to the shelf where you keep all your other movies. What, sir, are you pulling off the shelf to recommend as like an accompaniment to the Boxer's Omen?
I sincerely considered forfeiting my shelf pick this week because I don't even know how you follow up the Boxer's Omen or compare it even with the things that we said. That the closest I came to, and this is what my shelf pick will be, is Dario Argento's Suspiria. That Suspiria would be the second feature in a double feature for these movies because it's the cool down movie. Mm-hmm. And because Suspiria is a lot more moody, atmospheric. It wants to, you mentioned the scene of Susie banging coming into the airport at terminal, and that scene, even that, it wants to slowly float through the area and give you this kind of spooky mood and everything. The Boxer's Omen has no fucking time for that kind of stuff. It wants to go and continuous, like you say, from the very first shot, punching you in your fucking face. But there is a similar surreality to the approach of magic in both the Boxer's Omen and Suspiria, where things can happen and they don't really ever need or deserve explanation, where a pair of gross man hands can just appear behind a woman and kill her, or there'll be spooky yellow eyes in a room full of barbed wire, and that's just it, and it doesn't need to be explained, it doesn't need to be brought up again. We just accept that as that film's reality. You have to do the same thing with the Boxer's Omen, and I think Suspiria is definitely one of the benchmarks for presenting that kind of dream reality as something an audience can get into, and doing it very stylishly and colorfully, which both of these movies are. That's the closest I could come up with, but I'm very excited to hear what your shelf pick's going to be, Travis.
Well, after the first couple of scenes in the movie, I was distinctly reminded of Nicholas Winding Refn's Only God Forgives. And, the first scene in Only God Forgives is a Thai kickboxing match, just like in Boxer's Omen. And then, in Boxer's Omen, when we cut from this kickboxing match to this like deeply red lit bar, and the sort of wide shots of like seeing all the chairs and tables in the bar, I'm like, fuck me, man, this is so Only God Forgives. It's painful. Only God Forgives clearly has sort of a different, languid pace to it. But in many ways, Only God Forgives is just as absurd. But it appears to be taking itself a lot more seriously. When in fact, I think Only God Forgives deserves to be reevaluated through a slightly campier lens than it was. Originally, a lot of people criticize that movie as being sort of pretentious. I can see where people get that, but there's enough camp value in that movie to really sink some, delicious new flavor into that thing that people maybe hadn't seen before. Like really, evaluate it from the perspective of like Kristen Scott Thomas's character, who comes in and she's fucking vamping so hard. She just dominates that movie.
That's true. She is great in that.
Awesome.
Well, we definitely want to hear from you, loyal listeners, and what your shelf picks would be for the Boxer's Omen. So go to genrevision.com, go to the post for this episode, and comment in the comment section with your own shelf picks, and we'll feature them on a following episode, which we have to do with last week's episode on The Invisible Man. We got quite a few shelf picks from DT Grizzler. Their shelf pick was Gone Girl. Very good shelf pick and a movie I need to revisit.
I've seen it like 6 times. It's awesome.
Okay. That sounds like as far as Fincher goes, that's your Zodiac as it would be to me. I've seen Zodiac.
I think Zodiac is a better film, but I fucking love Gone Girl. I find it very watchable. And that's like really strange for me because when I first saw Gone Girl in the theaters, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it since theaters, but I remember coming out and being like, yeah, that was really good trash. Like it's a trashy kind of story, but told with such elegance and, incredible performances. And of course that Fincher methodical kind of approach. So it's definitely one I need to come back to. Mr. Milksteak's shelf pick was The Hitcher from 1986, starring the late, great Rutger Hauer, playing some truly messed up mind games with C. Thomas Howell. Such a good movie.
I've never seen The Hitcher, believe it or not.
It's a very simple kind of, I mean, that's all it is. It's just Rutger Hauer is torturing this poor kid and you don't really know why. Very good, very shocking movie at times. Also has a little bit of camp value. Definitely recommended. Eric Fuchs went ahead and did what I couldn't, and his shelf pick was Hollow Man, which I should say again, I adore Hollow Man. It's one of my favorites.
It is a really greasy, grimy exploitation film with some fantastic special effects.
Yeah, and it's got that Verhoeven magic. So, but he made a good point where because the Invisible Man movie is a movie about the victim of violence, Hollow Man is a movie about the villain.
Yeah.
So it kind of, scratches that itch as far as invisible person stories go for me. Fergal Kohlreevy had Mike Flanagan's Hush, another film where our protagonist is battling a foe without being able to rely on one of her senses, which is very much, Hush is inspired by my shelf pick from last week, which was Wait Until Dark. But I only saw Hush recently in the last year and really liked it. It's a good movie.
It's a very good movie.
And the last one is from Pale Fire, who had a bunch of picks, but eventually landed on Dogtooth, which I have not seen.
No, Yorgos Lanthimos, so I know I'm probably going to like it, but I just haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay, that is Lanthimos. Yeah, that's I can see. I've seen the poster, and I definitely know about it, but it's one I've just never gotten around to.
I think it's the movie he did right before The Lobster.
Ah, okay. Well, let's do some currently consuming.
Nom 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 nom.
Travis, what's been on your plate?
I'm just going to cover a couple of things I've seen on YouTube recently. I had a really busy week. I didn't have the chance to sit down and watch any other movies other than this one. But the director, David F. Sandberg, the guy who made Lights Out and Annabelle Creation and Shazam, he's a really good video essayist, and he talks a lot about techniques in filmmaking, and he does so in a very accessible way. He's made several short video essays about this, but the most recent one he put out was called The Troubles with Darkness in Horror, and he talks a little bit about how the fact that theaters don't change their projector bulbs often enough affects how they color grade and light movies now. So interesting little video essay. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. I definitely recommend you see that because he's a very sort of practical and honest voice when it comes to filmmaking. And now that he's transitioned from, little indie horror shorts to big, action blockbusters, he's got a really distinct perspective, and, he's just very open about talking about the process. I love it. The next one is a video essay from Patrick H. Willems, the film critic. He did something on the Simpsons episode, The Lemon of Troy, I think it is. Mm-hmm. So the whole video essay is called How Does a Perfect Simpsons Episode Work? That's actually a Simpsons episode I've never seen, but hearing him talk about The Simpsons was pretty enlightening. So I will link to that in the show notes as well. And then another thing I wanted to mention really quickly is YouTube show actually produced by Netflix on their YouTube channel. And it's the two drag queens, Trixie Mattel and Katya, who do the show on, I think it's World of
Wonder.
World of Wonder, yeah. They do a show called which I spoke about on the most recent currently consuming extended on Patreon. But it's basically them just riffing on certain Netflix shows. And you know what? It's pretty fucking funny. Those two together are a really good comedic pair. Mm-hmm. And to hear them ripping on shit like they rip on this, I think it's an anthology of like Dolly Parton, in stories inspired by Dolly Parton songs. And one of them is called Two Doors Down. And the way they rip on that, I've never seen Trixie Mattel laugh harder. It's fucking good. So it's called I Like to Watch. And you can catch that on YouTube. Again, link in the show notes. What have you been currently consuming?
Well, I also didn't get a lot in this week, but I watched the first 40 minutes of Glenn Danzig's Veronica. This has been hyped up as a big, terrible movie that headlined a festival or something, and that was absolutely roundly ridiculed and has been called Horror's The Room, this kind of stuff. I may end up finishing it, but after the first 40 minutes, I'm a little disappointed.
Well, I mean, it's outsider art, right? Or I don't know if it's enough to be called underground because Glenn Danzig is a celebrity, somebody of some repute, but it's definitely outsider art. Like, he's not known to be a filmmaker. No,
I mean, and he's the writer, director. He's co-credited as director of photography. He does the original music, all this stuff. And it's based apparently on his comics.
Sure.
And it's a horror anthology. And I got through the entirety of the first segment, which is about a woman who has an albino spider that when she goes to sleep turns into a giant albino guy with 6 arms who goes out and kills people.
Well, I mean, yeah, what does your albino spider do at night?
Right. And it's like, okay, sure. There's one the interesting thing about that story, which is like, okay, this is weird and bizarre and funny, is that it opens with this woman, her name's Dajette, and she's making out with a guy, and he goes to take her top off. She's like, no, don't take my top off. And when he does, it's revealed that her nipples are eyeballs. And
shit, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what's this? Is this going to have anything to do with anything? No. It doesn't.
Okay.
Like, there's literally nothing that in the story that has to do with her nipples being eyes. It is this whole other story about when she goes to sleep, this giant 6-armed albino guy goes out and kills people. At the end of the story, she decides to kill herself so that she's permanently asleep, and she's called the police, and the police show up and shoot the spider guy. And during this moment, one of her breasts is exposed, and one of the cops goes like, oh, it's weird. Her nipples are eyes. And that's it. That's moving on to the next story. So I was already like, okay. And then the next story, I don't know, it was like some woman got her face cut off, and then they cut to a strip club, and this strip club scene went on for like 5 minutes of nothing but just the soundtrack playing some song, which I'm assuming is being done by Danzig, and just watching strippers pole dance. And I was like, I'm going to be 32 this year. Like, I don't have time for this. And here's the thing, like, if I hadn't been exposed to these kind of movies earlier in my life, like I had to review them at certain times, and I just came across them or in some instances searched them out when I was younger, and I'd seen very, very, very low budget, productions, and oftentimes spearheaded by one specific creative person that's also the director.
It was like a bizarre vanity project where the guy like had no idea how shitty his movie actually was.
Yeah, and occasionally those movies can be very, very hilarious, but I don't know, like I think if this hadn't been made by Glenn Danzig, it wouldn't have that kind of appeal.
Sure.
Like there's some things in that first story that were like, okay, like, you know, the nipple eye thing. And there's a part where the white spider guy is standing in an alley propositioning to a prostitute, but she doesn't see him. And she's like, what do you want me to do? And he's like, first, I want to bend you over and fuck you in the ass. And I'm like, okay, sure. But also, it should be said, this first section, it's all with French actors speaking English.
Okay.
Very, which I'm assuming that's just, you know, that's where a lot of it was shot. And I mean, these are
like
actual
France or French Canada. What are we talking about?
I don't know. I'm not, this movie doesn't deserve my energy for research.
Fair enough.
They're just, but it's funny. It's like, okay, these are obviously their real accents, but this sounds like cartoon French accents. So yeah, maybe I'll finish it. It's an anthology thing, so I can kind of, you know, skim through or check
Who knows?
out.
Maybe the next 40 or 50 minutes are going to blow your fucking balls off, dude. Who knows?
I mean, I've read up on it, and apparently there's like a Countess Bathory story where there's just a lingering segment of her bathing in blood, and it's like, that's it. It's just watching her take a blood bath for like 15 minutes. I'm like, man, I need to read more. Like I
Right.
have books like that.
There's a load of dishes it needs doing. You know?
Right. Yeah. I have laundry that needs doing. Like, I don't have the, I need Boxer's Omens, to really come out and.
Right. I mean, the Boxer's Omen is really designed to give you the value, like, for your time.
Oh,
So.
by far. So yeah. I don't know. If I finish it, maybe I'll report back. Who knows? But let's close things out with our
Comment of the week.
This is from DT Grizzler, who mentioned about the Invisible Man trailer. He said, I only wish I had never seen the trailer because it sold out some great bits that happen after a slow but intense buildup. Trailers got a trailer, I guess. And I totally agree. I mean, that's oftentimes an issue that people have with marketing. But what was interesting, and you and I were talking about this, Travis, is that there was stuff that we saw in the trailers for this movie that was not in the finished movie.
'Tis true. There is this whole scene that was actually pretty striking where she is sitting in front of an empty chair. Elizabeth Moss's character is sitting in front of an empty chair, and we see a shot of the empty chair, and it looks like there could be like the shape of someone's invisible ass and legs sitting in there. And she says, there's someone sitting in that chair. And that scene does a great job of selling this sort of concept of the movie, but it is not in the movie.
No.
And watching the actual cut of the film that we got, it's like, I don't even know where they would fit that in. So it's like, was that made specifically for the trailer? I doubt it, but
Well, there was that, also the scene in which Elizabeth Moss is in the shower. In the trailers, an invisible handprint showed up on the glass door of the shower. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, and this invisible handprint was even like the custom emoji that they put up on Twitter. Like, it was such a striking image that they decided to sort of center the marketing campaign on that. And it's not in the movie at all.
Yeah, which there's a part of me that is like, okay, if people were waiting to see that moment or wanting to see how that moment played out and they didn't get it, that's, you know, understandable to be disappointed. But I also think of like comedy trailers where they'll use alternate takes and stuff for marketing, so you don't see that in the movie and you're surprised. I'm somewhat not against that. It's a tricky tightrope to walk sometimes.
Yeah, because if people feel like you're not giving them what they signed up for, then they won't come. And like,
right.
When I say they won't come, no, they will come and they will leave disappointed is what I meant to say. The marketing campaign for The Invisible Man was decidedly more sort of male gazy and lascivious. Like, it concentrated on those more sort of Hollow Man-esque aspects of like, oh, she's in the shower and he's going to be watching her while she's in the shower. It's like, yeah, that's kind of stuff is implied in the movie, but not so directly.
Well, and when you actually watch the movie, that's not the perspective.
Right.
So, you know, and talking about the moments in the trailer that were spoiled, yeah, I've gotten even to a point where if I know I'm going to see a movie, a lot of times I just avoid the trailers right out. Curiosity can get the better of me sometimes if it's something that we like with the recent Candyman trailer. It's like, we haven't seen anything about this movie at all, and it comes out in a couple months. When that trailer hit, I needed a fix. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I saw it. That's it. I could see nothing else from that movie and be like, yep, I know I'm going to see it. Don't need to see another second. So sometimes I feel where we've gotten to a point where you kind of know if you're interested at all in a movie. And if you know, you're going to go see the next big comic book event movie or something, you're going to go see it. So don't feel the need to
And at this point, you're probably going to like it.
Well, and just, don't feel the need to have to see any footage that comes out or be part of that conversation. Be like, yeah, I know I'm going to go see Black Widow, so I don't need to watch anything about it. And that's fine. So yeah, but I feel you with The Invisible Man. Definitely the one moment that I saw in the trailers and stuff that I wish I hadn't seen that was a great reveal is, spoiler alert for The Invisible Man if you've seen it, is when she dumps the paint on him.
Sure.
That's a great moment, and it played out great thanks to the musical singing and the pacing and everything. Obviously, that's something that you don't get across in the marketing, but
yeah, the pacing of that whole attic scene is pretty great.
Yeah, so I feel you there, but marketing and trailers is always one of my fun topics to talk about. So I won't rant anymore. We'll get out of here, but we do have to say next week Travis will be taking a little vacation. It's going to be birthday week for Travis.
Yeah, I'm going out of town, so I'll see you guys the week after. But to sub in for me is our wonderful friend Danny Ryan. Hi, Danny. She's going to come on and talk about the Sin City movie with Drew.
Yep. So we hope you'll be here next week. I'm looking forward to talking about that with Danny. And as always, we want to thank you all so much for listening. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton. Boy.
We'll see you next week.
Right here on Genre Vision.